All right, guys, welcome to the Buff Show. Today we're going to go over the pros and cons of an open house. Me and Mr. Cade Kerrigan. So, any thoughts off the top?
So we have, I think most sellers, I would say, are probably pretty open to an open house.
Yeah.
Most probably encourage it and want the exposure, but there are the handful you'll come across that just, they don't want to do it for multiple reasons. And we'll kind of talk about those today,
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different opinions on them.
I get it. Like, and I've been doing probably 4 open houses a month on average. And I don't particularly love them. Like it's a Saturday. It's annoying. Like for me, it's not like I'm like desperately wanting to do open houses, but I do feel like overall there's a lot of pros for sellers. And in order to get the listing sold, I think they do help in, like, we're all doing everything that we can, even if it's a slight chance, to help a seller sell their house. So, and I like that stat that you found. It says, according to NAR, 3% of house buyers found their home via an open house in 2023.
So we know like 3% is not a huge number, obviously, but it's still a portion of the buyer pool that is purchasing a home from finding a home out on an open house.
Yeah.
And so I think, obviously when you are marketing a product or an asset, whatever it is, your goal is to sell that product and to get it to move. And so you're going to do all you can do to get it to as many people as possible.
Yeah. So let's jump into the pros, and that fits perfectly in line with the first one. It's increase in exposure. So whenever you're selling a house, there's a few things that bump the exposure up on a listing, and that's it being new or like hot, like just released, like Zillow, Realtor.com, all these big real estate websites are going to bump that to the top of the page because it's new, it's fresh, and there's activity happening there.
Sure.
The other things that attract exposure on those websites are price drops and open houses.
Sure.
So if you're on Zillow or Realtor.com on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, chances are you'll see new listings, price drops, and open houses.
Yeah, and that's if you're just scrolling, what I mean? You have like a certain location or whatever or criteria, and you're just kind of scrolling. You'll see those properties kind of first as they start popping up.
It's like being the first on the Google feed. If whatever you're Googling, like just by doing an open house, like it's not out. I guess we'll talk about some of the cons, but you got to clean, you got to leave your house. But it's just another way that you can get some additional exposure there.
One other thing also is if there's any other agents that are helping represent a buyer and they have on their search criteria open houses because they just want to go check out homes in the area, say Bountiful, whatever it is, and you list yours as an open house, you're going to have one that weekend. It'll pop up on their search in their email, so they'll be able to see your home again. It'll kind of match their criteria. So that's more exposure on the property.
Yeah. You want to cover number 2?
So number 2, we got convenient of viewing. So there's lots of buyers who may be a little timid or maybe a little shy or don't have an agent, don't know if they want to work with an agent. And so it gives them a chance to be able to get into these properties, to be able to walk them and see these properties in the area that they're interested in. Also, you have lots of people just kind of driving around. I know this isn't always the best thing for it, and we'll kind of talk about that as well, but they may not be qualified or they may just be looky-loos, but these looky-loos know people who are looking to buy a house.
Yeah.
So that's more exposure.
Yeah, I would say there's so many buyers that are just like, they don't want to bug their agent. Like a lot of people, like when you're thinking about selling, it's a big decision and they don't want to have to reach out to an agent or like have that commitment being like, hey, can you show us this house?
For sure.
Even though they might be fairly serious. So my question to you is, do you get those phone calls from buyers that are like, hey, Cade, we just saw this house in an open house. We're actually really interested. And that might be the first spark that gets them like actually committing to wanting to buy or sell.
So I actually had a closing recently where I had been working with these guys for probably 6, 7, 8 months. And I had shown them a handful of properties, and the direction that they were going with me was a bit different direction than the way we ended up going. And I don't know why they didn't want to let me know, but they didn't tell me that they were changing directions on what their search was. And they ended up going to a couple open houses and they found the house that they wanted to make an offer on. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. I think that sometimes they just kind of want to go almost on their own. They don't want
Yeah.
to have to go with an agent and walk the home with an agent. They kind of would like to just go with their spouse or their family or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and kind of just be a little bit more intimate, I guess,
Yeah.
with the home. So
Yeah. Okay. Number 3, it creates some buzz. So it's been 2 weekends ago, did an open house on a property, and we had like 6 or 7 groups come through. A lot of those groups were overlapping.
Mhm.
And they're seeing people coming in, going out, and it just creates a sense of urgency because one of the buyers that we went under contract with, or the buyer that we went under contract with, came in to the open house with their agent, and they saw other people coming through,
Mhm.
and it does create that sense of urgency and that excitement. And there's been a few other. So like our favorite thing is you list on like a Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, open house on Saturday. There's been numerous times where we'll get offers with a response deadline of like Friday at 5 because they don't want you to do the
to
open
hit the
house.
open house.
Even if they're not going, like they're just like, man, we don't want our house that we're trying to buy to be open to the public.
Sure.
So
they can almost beat the rush.
yeah.
Mhm.
And there's been a few times that we've gone under contract with buyers, had to cancel an open house because the buyers were willing to create an offer attractive enough to make the seller cancel the open house. It doesn't happen very often, and I hate canceling open houses because it's hard to, you can't update everybody, right? It just, you almost have to still keep it open for those people that didn't get the memo that it was canceled. But there, of course, a potential buyer could buy out the option for a seller to like cancel the open house if they made the offer good enough. So
for sure. Number 4, we got instant feedback. So the nice part about this is as you hit the market, obviously your agent, they pull comps and they do their due diligence on figuring out what the list price should be, what they think an appraisal could come back at, all that type of stuff. But ultimately, every house is different.
Mhm.
Every home on the market is going to sell differently. And whether it's location, whether it's the color, whatever it is. And so as you have these open houses, you get people in the homes, and the agents that are listing the property are actually able to be in the home with all these people that are coming in and walking the property. And a lot of times these people who are walking the property, they want to talk about it.
Mhm.
They want to talk about fireplace, the carpet, the color, what they do like, what they don't like. And so you kind of get to listen in on those conversations. And also a lot of times they'll actually have the conversation directly with you. It's also a good time to, as agents are showing the property to their clients, it's a good time to also just reflect and get the feedback from the other buyer's agent. And we also have these feedback cards that we leave out. And so we'll get some contact information, and then we'll get some instant feedback on these cards that they're filling, and they can leave that.
Yeah, it's nice. The instant feedback loop is super nice because you have a pretty good idea after an open house how it's going to go.
For sure.
Right? You did one in Bountiful, and you're like, dude, you're going to get some offers.
Yeah. So I paid and had a couple open houses that day. And so I went and sat one for him in Bountiful, and I bet I ran out of papers. I bet we had 15, 18 people or groups through the property. And I mean, multiple parties in that open house were telling me they were going to be making an offer and that they'd be in touch. So it's awesome when you see something like that where okay, like we're doing whatever it is we're doing, like we staged it correctly. We listed it at a good price where it's getting to the competition, and likely all the competition is going to push the price higher.
Yeah.
And so it's good when you have opportunities like that to give that back to the owners.
When we sold that one for 26 grand above asking.
That's awesome.
It was crazy. So, and we had that one was bananas, and goes to show the power of some open houses. Number 5, listing agent attended showings, which you kind of touched in the last one. Like obviously for the open house, we're not going to have nobody there. Either the listing agent in our office will be there, or another agent within our office will be there, but you'll have a representative from our office there conducting the open house. I love that because then it allows me, like, I'm not able to attend all of our showings on our listings, right? If it's under $1 million, like we just don't attend. We can't. It's physically impossible for us to attend all those showings. But at an open house, we're there, we can answer questions, and we can help sell the house in a way that a private showing can't, right? Because a buyer's agent's not fully in tune with everything about the property, what upgrades and things like that. And we try and make that accessible for them with the memorandums and booklets that we leave in the houses. But if we're there, we can really push to sell it
Yeah.
and help out that process. So
Well, and you've walked the property with the owners. You've probably walked the neighborhood. Like you know the property so well as the listing agent.
mhm.
And so you're able to kind of tell some inside stuff about the property that may not be on the listing or may not be something that you would just know.
Yeah.
So, number 6 is potential for unplanned buyers. So again, when we do an open house, we market with social media, we run ads on it, and then we also put out signs everywhere. And so a lot of people are just kind of cruising around and they'll see an open house, they have nothing else going on. They might go, hey, we are in the market, but
Mhm.
we don't know if this is where we want to be, or we don't know where we want to be, or they may just be getting to the point where they're starting to look,
Mhm.
and they might just swing by the open house and check it out, and it
Yeah.
might be the one. It's probably a pretty rare, but it does happen.
Yeah.
They're part of that 3%.
Yeah, I would say out of every open house, I probably have one just random, like, oh, I was just driving around and I saw signs, wanted to see this house. They could be looky-loos, or it could be like, hey, I didn't know I was in the market, but this house is amazing.
Sure.
And then it gets that dream in their heads, and then they're fighting to make it happen. So
For sure.
it is a good potential just for some unplanned buyers. So number 7, bang for your buck. So if going back to that open house you did in Bountiful, where there was like 15 or 18 different showings, or groups that came through, can you imagine if you're a seller occupying a house, how much time and effort it would take to get 15 different groups through the house?
It'd be a lot of time cleaning, a lot of time putting stuff away, and then
you just sold your house.
Mhm.
What was the process like as a
Sucks.
seller? Because you have kids.
It is. It's you plan ahead, right?
Yeah.
Like we throughout the process of getting the home ready to sell, we decluttered and we got rid of a lot of stuff.
Mhm.
So that way, when we knew showings would be scheduled, we were able to pack things away quickly
Yeah.
and get out. And I can't imagine having to do that another, we did it a handful of times, but can you imagine having to do it 18 times in probably a 2-day span? Like,
Right.
that would be insane.
Yeah.
You'd just be gone all day long. So you might as well just do an open house anyways.
Right.
But yeah, it is hard. It's a lot, and it's a lot of stress, especially for my wife when she was
Yeah.
taking care of 2 kids and I was gone or whatever. And
Mhm.
so it is
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah. So if you can cram open houses into cram showings, multiple showings into an open house window, 2 or 3 hour window, that's like, let's
Ideal.
let's make that happen.
For sure.
So those are some of the pros. Any other pros that you can think of that you wanted to mention?
Not off the top of my head. I don't think so.
Let's jump into some of the cons of holding an open house. Why might some sellers not want to do an open house?
Yeah. So number 1 is, I think this is the main one, is security concerns. People
Mhm.
are worried that, well, if you have this many people walking the property, there's a higher chance that if something could get stolen or could get broken
Mhm.
or damaged or whatever it is. And I think that is a concern. That's a valid concern too.
Mhm.
And so one thing we would recommend to the owner of the property is anything valuable, cash, weapons or whatever,
Mhm.
or like anything that has memorabilia or whatever it is that holds quite a bit of value, just get it out. Get it
Yeah.
tucked away into a safe place, or just get it out of the property. That way, obviously there is an increased chance of stains or something like that, but we do a good job at trying to get booties on everybody coming in the property. We don't just sit in one spot during the open house. We kind of walk around and we try to keep an eye on the property.
Mhm.
So we do our best to maintain a presence that somebody's watching.
Yeah.
So that way that they're not thinking that they're just kind of in the house. And we do try to remind people as they're coming through that this isn't their home. And if they have kids, to keep an eye on their children. So,
Well, and we're not bringing like chocolate milk and
No.
like we'll bring some refreshments, but it's like stuff like water and a cookie or something
Mhm.
like that. And oftentimes we'll give it to them as they're walking out. So, but I've done tons of open houses. I've never had a seller have something missing from an open house.
and I think it's rare. I think most, even in an open house, most people are coming through with an agent
Yeah.
regardless. And so an
Yeah.
agent, that's an agent's duty regardless. But
Mhm.
you do have other people coming through, but they're not coming through an open house to look to damage the home.
steal,
That's not the reason they're coming in. So
And then number 2, another reason why you may not, or a con of doing an open house, is just unqualified visitors. Just not all attendees may be serious buyers. Some might be neighbors, looky-loos, not qualified. That's okay. Like, no, I don't care.
Mm.
Obviously, when I'm doing an open house, I want it to be serious people, but I'd rather have the looky-loos come through the open house than a private showing where I'm having to clean and prep for and go through all this energy and effort for a looky-loo,
For sure.
right? Or for an unqualified buyer.
For sure.
So-
Well, and like I said before, even the looky-loos know people who are looking to buy,
Yeah.
or could be looking to buy, or it's likely that most of the looky-loos are from the area. And so if they're from the area, they probably know people who would like to move to the area. So it could be, again, it could be more marketing for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So number 3 is time and preparation. So I would say there's probably more time and more preparation that goes into getting the home ready for an open house versus
Mhm.
getting the home ready for a showing.
Mhm.
You know you're going to have a lot more people there. You know that there's also going to be more agents. There's going to be, and so ideally you're going to get the property as ready as you possibly can.
Mhm.
So that way it shows really well. But again, one open house versus 3 or 4 showings is, I would rather do the one time with the open house.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Yeah, they're both work. Selling your house is just work.
is.
So it's a con, but it's a con you chose to.
you have to go through it. You
Yeah.
have to do it. So
There's no getting around it. Number 4, lack of personalization. So an open house is a little less private. And this is more on the buyer's end. It's not a private showing. There might be other buyers that are walking around, so you don't get that real tailored private showing,
Mhm.
intimate with the house. But you have the listing agent there, so there's definitely some pros to it as well. But it is a little less personalized to the buyer.
For sure. The one thing that so number 5, the one thing we kind of haven't mentioned is that there is a chance that nobody shows up,
Yeah.
and that is a possibility. And I think that's okay. It's kind of the necessary risk. If you list a home, there's a chance nobody schedules any showings on the
Yeah.
property too.
Yeah.
So you're never avoiding that risk just by not doing an open house. And so I wouldn't let that be something that scares you off from doing an open house, because it might just be good feedback too. It's a possibility,
Yeah.
or it could have been a bad weekend. Like, you just never
Mhm.
know. And so maybe if you're doing multiple open houses and nobody's showing up on multiple open houses, that might be
Assign your price way too high or something. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I've done a ton of open houses in my day, and I wish I had the exact number, but I've always had at least one person come through until this year. There was one that I did 3 in one day, and I didn't have one person come through all 3, which I was like mind blown.
Yeah.
But we still sold 2 of the 3 properties, not from the open house. One we pulled off the market, and they're still thinking about selling, mostly from change of plans. But it's just that, like you said, that's a risk you have to be willing to take, that nobody might not show up. But I would say it's like a 95% chance that people will show up, 5% chance that nobody shows up.
Right.
So
It's few. I mean, most times, every time we did 3 open houses on our house when we sold it, and every time we had at least 1 or 2 people come through the home. So,
when I think we should talk about too, and we didn't talk about this before, but why we like to do open houses, because open houses is another way to expose our listings to more buyers and to market it that way. But there's exposure for us as agents.
sure.
To meet other buyers, and maybe they're not interested in your house, but we could help them on other properties. So there is some incentive for agents as well to conduct open houses, even though I got 3 coming up this weekend, 1 on Friday, 2 on Saturday. And it's just like, it's not a great way. It's not a super fun way to spend the weekend, but it is a good way to market the listings, and for me to market me for potential other buyers and meet more people and things like that.
Absolutely.
So
we did just want to talk about the process of conducting an open house. So this is after we have had our listing appointment. This is after the home has been staged, and the home is now listed and active on the market. So we'd like to say we plan an open house 3 to 5 days in advance so plan the open house 3 to 5 days in advance. That gives us ample time to basically market the open house.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're just listing, we always like to go live on like a Tuesday through Thursday with an open house on Saturday. That just helps build up the excitement.
Right.
There's an open house. It gives
property first hits the market. It hits everybody's emails. It goes out, and then they're looking at it, and there's an open house. Like, it's a good time to do it.
Yeah. And then once the challenge we run into is if a property's been listed for a while, sometimes we'll get sellers like, hey, let's do an open house. And it's Thursday and they want to do an open house on Saturday. That's not enough time to really get the marketing going, get it posted. There's a lot of work and we have a process to get a house ready for an open house. So give us let's post it on Monday or Tuesday for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
So let's decide a week in advance that we're going to do an open house. That way we can get everything running how it should be and really let the open house be out there public for a while. Because as the weekend gets closer, Zillow, Realtor.com, all these websites will start to be like, oh, there's an open house coming up here, showing that up.
For sure.
And then we obviously get it posted. We'll do social media posts, some paid ads on social media, posted on the MLS, and that syndicates it out to all the other websites, Realtor.com, Zillow. We'll put it on an e-blast if it's the right timing. We can let the neighbors know. We can send out postcards or personal invites. There's just a lot of time or a lot of things we can do if we have the time to do an open house correctly.
For sure.
So,
and once all the marketing is kind of put in place, obviously the owners, what they need to do is just deep clean the house, get it presentable, and get the home ready for, ideally you have 10 groups come through the house. And so you want the home to show as good as it can.
Yeah.
So,
and then either the listing agent or a team member will be there to conduct the open house. They'll place signs out before, put some flags up. Sometimes we'll have treats or refreshments there. Typically water and some cookies or different things we've tried.
We don't just have an open house on some random day and some random time.
Yeah.
There's a reason for the times and the days that we do the open houses. And so typically we do an open house for 2 to 4 hours. That gives enough time for people to kind of come in and go, and they don't feel like they're rushed or crammed down to an hour to be there and be out. So it actually gives people just more convenient for them, which is kind of what everything works on nowadays. But so we like to do early morning, late afternoon, late morning, early afternoon. So anywhere from 10 to 4, and then on a Saturday, and then on Fridays, anywhere from 4 to 8, give people time to get home from work and go to show up. But so there's a couple of reasons for those. I'll let Peyton go over those, but
yeah, it's just the Friday afternoon, people are getting off of work, and we've had some good success with some Friday afternoon open houses. We did one in Eden and had 4 groups come through a couple weeks ago. And it was I think we did it from 5 to 7, just a 2-hour window. But yeah, just giving convenient times for people to come through. On Saturdays, like Cade was saying, 10 to 4 is often a good time. And then I've never really done a whole lot on Sunday, but I've seen people do open houses on Sunday. I would assume 10 to 4 is a good time as well.
Sure.
That time, it's just good with the natural lighting, helps the home feel brighter and more inviting. And those are peak traffic times for people, like when they're out looking at houses and stuff like that. So anything else you want to throw in there on open houses?
That's it. I mean, I think open houses have a lot of value. I think it's something that as you're selling a home, you should at least be open to having a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Definitely don't want to force or corner any seller into having an open house. It's your home, and you're able to do whatever it is you want to do with it. But the goal is to sell the home, and to do that, ideally, you're going to want to market it out to everybody and as many people as possible. And an open house helps with that.
It's definitely, we want to be able to apply all the tools and tricks and things that we can do to get the household. Like, that's our job, is to help you. But if you're adamant about not doing one, that's fine. But hopefully this gives you the pros and some of the cons. And we're definitely the team and the brokerage that's wanting to do everything that we can to help you achieve your goals. If doing an open house isn't one of them, we're fine to not do one, even though we feel like it could be helpful. But
we want to earn our paycheck, you know what I mean? That's I don't know.
Well, and there's been a time, there was a listing that we just ended up selling, but man, I think we did 8 or 9 open houses on it. And we were doing price cuts, and it was just everything. I was like, I am not going to quit until this thing's sold, but that's what it took. And so we're willing to do what it takes to get it sold. And if the sellers are doing price drops, I want to be willing and able to do the open houses. I never want a seller to be like, hey, I want you to do an open house, and us be like, oh, we'll get to it in 2 months. There might be
Right.
some weekends that we just can't, but we will make an open
Well,
house
and
work for you.
if a seller has to price drop a home, we want them to feel like my agent is doing everything they can to get my home
Yeah.
sold without me having to
Yeah.
price drop. So that's every price drop they do, that's less money in their pocket.
Right.
And so that's obviously that's the goal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So anyways, well, hopefully you found this helpful, and we look forward to help getting your house sold.
thanks, you guys.